up on this Thursday edition of Newsline at Noon, President Park Geun-hye is receiving her second government status report on policy tasks to revitalize the economy based on creativity and innovation. Korea's ruling Saenuri Party Supreme Council members Ho Chung-won will meet with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Tokyo this afternoon to deliver a message from President Park Geun-hye. Plus, an AlQaeda affiliate in Yemen says it was behind the terror attack at the Paris offices of Charlie Hebdo. The U.S. is looking into the claim. These stories and more on Newsline at Noon. It's noon Thursday, January 15th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Jin-ju.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. We begin with the government's plans to make Korea a creative economy. Economy-related ministries and agencies are presenting their action plans for the next 12 months to President Park Geun-hye, who has been pushing really rather hard for a radical economic overhaul of the nation.
The main focus of the status report today will be on creating a dynamic economy based on creativity and innovation. Song Ji-san tells us more.
Innovation and entrepreneurship are the keywords for 2015. 5 government ministries and organizations in charge of science, technologies, and industries put together a blueprint on Thursday to turn Korea into a vibrant, creative economy. The Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning, the Trade Ministry, the Small and Medium Business Administration, and the nation's finance and communications regulators all vowed to follow up with action plans to promote entrepreneurship needed to turn ideas into businesses.
We'll create a dynamic economy where creativity thrives and new businesses are born and grow. The first step is to set up an organic ecosystem conducive to an innovative economy.
One of the government's top projects this year is setting up innovative creative economy centers in 17 industrial sites by June. Each center will specialize in one specific industry based on the strength and characteristics of the local area. One-stop services will be provided at these centers for startups seeking funds, partners, distribution channels, and clients. Seoul is also seeking to make better use of its free trade agreements with other countries to boost growth. The government wants to help companies, especially small and medium-sized businesses, make better use of recently agreed free trade deals, and in particular, the one with China. Seoul will launch a consolidated information platform and set up a China desk, a one-stop service for exporters seeking advice on expanding their outbound shipments. The government is aiming to lock $600 billion in exports and attract $20 billion in foreign direct investment this year, to become an FTA hub and business center for the East Asia region. The government is vying to make collaborative efforts across its ministry so that the Korean economy can take another leap forward this year. If things work out as policymakers plan, ordinary Koreans will feel their society is more innovative and that their lives are getting better by the end of this year. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
And in line with the president's push for an innovative economy, President Park Geun-hye has vowed to throw government support behind efforts to keep Korea front and center of the hyper-connected digital revolution. She said investment would help build momentum for economic growth for the next 30 years. Son Jang-in reports.
President Park Geun-hye on Wednesday said that Korea will stay at the forefront of the global push to try and connect all objects to the internet, pointing to innovative technologies as top priority.
변화와 발전을 이루어가는 데 있어서 과학기술과 정보방송통신 분야가 혁신과 융합의 플랫폼이 되어야 한다고 생각합니다.
She also vowed to enhance the country's competitiveness by linking key industries including automobile, electronics, and construction to the ICT sector. It's a move that the president believes will push economic growth.
초연결 디지털 혁명에서도 한 발 앞서 나가서 향후 30년의 경제성장 동력을 마련할 수 있도록 정부는 최선을 다해 지원할 것입니다.
Korea is one of the most wired countries in the world. As part of efforts to stay ahead of the IT revolution and promote policies aimed at revitalizing the domestic economy, President Park reinforced her commitment to ease regulations that hinder scientific research, development, and investment. 손정인, Arirang News.
Over at the National Assembly, rival party leaders and floor leaders gathered for the first time this year to discuss a slew of pending issues, including a proposal to revise Korea's constitution. While the lawmakers agree that livelihood bills need to be given priority, they disagree about the direction of political reforms. The main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, is seeking to advance talks on political reform issues, including a proposed constitutional revision and redistricting. The ruling Saenuri Party reiterated that now is the golden time to focus on the economy rather than constitutional reforms and urged the opposition camp to cooperate on the passage of economic-related bills. Now, in the wake of public outrage over news of a teacher slapping a 4-year-old child at a daycare center in Incheon this week, the government is stepping up efforts to prevent similar incidents from happening again. Education Minister Hwang Woo-yeol said Wednesday that the Education Ministry will work with the Health Ministry to come up with special measures to prevent child abuse. The Health Ministry oversees the nation's daycare centers. Now, echoing the sentiment, ruling Saenuri Party leader Kim Moo-sung said Thursday that he was outraged to see the footage of the caregiver slapping the 4-year-old. He demanded that related government offices come up with policies to better protect children at daycare centers. A group of Korean lawmakers are currently halfway through a 3-day trip to Japan. The focal point of their time in Japan comes this afternoon, though, as they're expected to hold talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. During their meeting, the Korean lawmakers will deliver a message from President Park Geun-hye herself. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
A South Korean parliamentary delegation will meet with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Tokyo on Thursday afternoon in the hope of thawing the two countries' frosty relations. 9 lawmakers, led by the ruling Saenuri Party Supreme Council member Seo Chung-won, are currently on a 3-day visit to Japan. During his meeting with Abe, Seo is expected to deliver a message from President Park Geun-hye in person, which will include a New Year's greeting and detail her hopes for improved ties. The message could also include calls for a shift in Japan's perception of history and the need to resolve Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. President Park had laid these out as preconditions for a summit during her New Year's press conference.
위안부 피해자 할머니들의 경우에는 그분들이 연세가 상당히 높으셔서 이게 조기에 어떤 그 해결책이 나오지 않으면은 영구 미제로 빠질 수가 있다.
The South Korean leader has been adamant that she will not meet one-on-one with Abe until he apologizes for Tokyo's wartime atrocities. In a meeting on Wednesday, lawmakers from the two countries agreed to work on making a summit happen before June 22nd, which marks the 50th anniversary of their diplomatic ties. Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party General Council Chairman Toshihiro Nikai is expected to lead a 1,000-member delegation to South Korea next month. The question now is whether the parliamentary diplomacy will be enough to break the ice between the two neighbors. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
And the cabinet of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has approved Japan's largest ever defense budget. The new $42 billion spending plan calls for scores of new maritime aircraft, stealth fighters and vehicles. The boost reflects Abe's push to build a more active military and reinterpret the country's long-held pacifist constitution. In related news, Japan and China are trying to ease tensions over a disputed island chain in the East China Sea, which you can see there, known as Senkaku in Japan and Jiaoyu in China. The two countries have agreed to set up a special hotline to prevent clashes in this area. The two sides say they will operate the hotline soon, marking their first discussion on this issue in over 2.5 years. US President Barack Obama is going to lay out plans next week to protect American consumers and businesses from cyber threats. A White House official says Obama has already begun introducing related legislative proposals and executive actions that will be part of his State of the Union address next Tuesday. They tackle things such as identity theft and privacy issues, cybersecurity and broadband access. A diplomatic source says there is a very good chance Obama will mention North Korea by name after Pyongyang's alleged cyber hacking attack of Sony Pictures, adding to Washington's overall cyber woes in recent weeks. The Twitter and YouTube accounts for the U.S. Central Command were also taken over by hackers this week who claim to be working on behalf of the terror group that calls itself Islamic State. Now, staying in the U.S., and the Republican-led House of Representatives has voted to undo large portions of President Barack Obama's immigration policies. This includes Obama's recent executive actions and an earlier program that allowed immigrants who entered the U.S. illegally as children to stay in the country. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The U.S. House of Representatives has overturned President Obama's immigration legislation aimed at protecting immigrants who came to the U.S. illegally as children. The House voted for the legislation that provides roughly $40 billion to fund the Homeland Security Department for the rest of the year, which funds U.S. border security, counterterrorism, among others. On that legislation, the House attached amendments that will undo actions backed by Obama, providing temporary deportation relief, and offer work permits to some 4 million illegal immigrants. Another amendment attached is aimed at canceling legislation the Obama administration passed in 2012 and deferred deportation actions for more than 600,000 immigrants who arrive in the U.S. as children. The amendment was voted down 2018 to 209. The legislation will now be sent to the Senate, where Republicans, who have 54 seats, will have to gather 60-vote majority to pass it. Democratic leaders say the Republican provisions will hurt immigrant families and hurt the GOP in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Let's now get a check on some of the other global headlines we're following this hour with Eunice Kim at the News Center.
Eunice, after days of speculation, the Yemeni branch of AlQaeda has come out to claim that it was behind last week's attack on the French magazine Charlie Hebdo.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. And the leader of that group, also known as Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, additionally warned of more tragedies and terror to come. This as French President François Hollande announced he was sending the country's flagship aircraft carrier to Iraq to assist in the fight against the Islamic State group there. Connie Kim has this story.
Al-Qaeda in Yemen claims it was behind last week's deadly terror attack on the satirical French publication Charlie Hebdo. Appearing on a video posted online, the top commander of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Nasser al-Ansi, said the killings were retaliation for the magazine's depictions of the Prophet Muhammad. He added the former leader of the Al-Qaeda group, Anwar al-Awlaki, had masterminded the attack years ago. Al-Awlaki was killed in a U.S. drone strike in 2011 and is known to have inspired jihadi militants in the U.S. and Britain. Washington has confirmed the video is authentic, but they're still looking into the claims made by Nasser al-Ansi. On the same day the video emerged, French President François Hollande announced France was dispatching its nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, Charles de Gaulle, to the Gulf to aid in global efforts to defeat Islamic State militants in Iraq.
Today, the situation in the Middle East justifies our aircraft carrier's presence. So thanks to the Charles de Gaulle, we will have precious intelligence.
Hollande added that if needed, French jets could conduct more operations in Iraq. France was the first country to join the U.S.-led airstrikes against IS militants. And back in France, authorities there arrested 54 people on Wednesday for defending last week's terror attacks. Comedian Dieudonne Mbala is one of the detained on potential charges of glorifying terrorism on Facebook. The comedian and the other people that were arrested are not suspected of being involved in last week's attacks, raising questions about whether the French government is infringing on the freedom of speech. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Divers will search the main body of AirAsia Flight 8501 today after it was discovered on the ocean floor by a Singaporean Navy ship on Wednesday. In a Facebook post, Singapore's defense minister revealed images of the plane's fuselage, where many of the 112 people still missing are believed to be. The photos taken by an underwater vehicle showed the damaged wing and pieces of the AirAsia slogan painted on the exterior hull. Investigators say data on both flight recorders retrieved earlier this week have been downloaded in a lab in Jakarta, adding that analysis could take weeks, if not months. 162 people were on board the Singapore-bound plane when it lost contact on December 28th. Health authorities have confirmed 2 new cases of the bird flu in China's Guangdong province, amid warnings that the region is in a high incidence period for the illness with the start of winter. A 52-year-old woman and a 37-year-old man were described as being in serious condition and receiving treatment at hospitals in the city of Dongguan. One day earlier, on Tuesday, the southern province had reported 2 other human infections of the H7N9 strain. Earlier this month, Hong Kong authorities culled 15,000 chickens after the virus was found in poultry imported from Guangdong. And Pope Francis is drawing huge interfaith crowds in Sri Lanka, surprising even the Vatican. Hundreds of thousands of Sri Lankans lined up to meet the pontiff in Colombo. He canonized Sri Lanka's first saint in a public mass, Indian-born missionary Joseph Vows, who had been captured in Ceylon for being a spy in the 18th century. Traveling to a Catholic shrine at a former war zone, Pope Francis also called for reconciliation, justice, and peace in the island nation still dealing with the legacy of a quarter-century-long civil war. Pope Francis heads to his next stop, the Philippines, on this Thursday.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broom and Jin Ju.
I'm Jin Ju.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about 11.
The Bank of Korea has decided to keep its key interest rate at a historic low of 2% for another month to see if the recent fall in oil prices and the 2 rate cuts last year help boost the domestic economy. However, analysts say yet another rate cut could be on the cards in the next month or 2. Shin Se-min has the details.
They're keeping the rate as is. Following its monthly monetary policy meeting on Thursday, the Bank of Korea announced it is keeping its key interest rate unchanged at 2% for January, continuing its wait-and-see stance for a 3rd straight month. The central bank cut the rate twice last year in August and October, each by 0.25 percentage point. The rate cuts were in line with the government's efforts to boost a feeble domestic economy, leaving the country's base rate at an historic low that hasn't been seen since the height of the global financial crisis in 2009. The BOK's decision to maintain the rate comes as the government focuses on structural reforms to pull the economy out of its low-growth rut rather than short-term measures. And further lowering the key rate would also prompt concerns about the country's snowballing household debt. Market analysts suggest, however, that the BOK will likely cut the rate sometime in the first quarter of the year, given the grim outlook for the nation's economic growth. The analysts cite a weak domestic economic sentiment and a low inflation rate as the reasons behind their prediction. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
6 out of 10 women in their 40s and 50s are now back in the world of work as the Park administration continues its push to improve labor market conditions for women who quit their jobs after marriage or giving birth. It's definitely a good sign, but looking closely into the numbers isn't all good news. Kim Ji-yeon explains.
More women in their 40s and 50s are returning to the workforce. In fact, Statistics Korea says the employment rate for this group was at its highest in 16 years in December.
The employment rate for women in their 40s stood at over 65%, up 0.6 percentage points from the same month the previous year. The employment rate for women in their 50s was near 61%. That means approximately 6 out of 10 middle-aged women in Korea have a job. This comes amid a drop in the employment rate for men in the same age group. Some say the increase in the female employment rate for this group should be viewed as somewhat positive, arguing the government's efforts to encourage companies to hire more flexible part-timers have borne fruit. A flexible part-timer is someone who works for the same pay and benefits as an employee engaged to work full-time, but works in the morning or afternoon for 4 hours a day. Others say things aren't as rosy as they look, saying the kinds of jobs these women have may not be of high quality and offer low job security and wages. They also point to a dismal economic situation that has prompted women to work because their households are facing an uncertain retirement because of a decrease in household income. Real wage increases have remained in the 0% range for 2 straight quarters, leading up to the July to September period of last year. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Korea is being advised to follow Singapore's lead when it comes to securing overseas investments. The Korea Economic Research Institute says that while Singapore's economy is only a quarter the size of Korea's, it's able to compete for foreign direct investment with countries like the US and China due in large part to its flexible labour market, limited regulations and low taxes. It was, in fact, ranked 6th by the UN in terms of FDI in 2013 with a total of $64 billion. Korea, on the other hand, ranked a lowly 21st with a total of $12 billion. Now, are you a fan of K-pop? If you are, you may be interested in visiting the place that's coming up in this next report, because one of Korea's largest talent agencies, SM Entertainment, has just opened a multicultural complex where you can get the ultimate K-pop experience. You can even watch a hologram of your favorite artist singing and dancing right in front of you. Connie Lee takes a look.
In Seoul's trendy Gangnam district, there's a new cultural complex where you can soak up the full K-pop experience. It's called SM Town at COEX Artium. Take a look inside. Built by one of Korea's biggest talent agencies, SM Entertainment, this 6-story multicultural space cost about $23 million. For the opening ceremony, K-pop stars like EXO, Girls' Generation, and Super Junior lined the red carpet, with the fans clearly excited to get even a brief glimpse of them. The center boasts some high-tech features like a touchscreen jukebox and items from SM artists themselves.
I believe it's time to show our content in a new way to the world, with our unique entertainment space.
And the highlight of this complex may be its state-of-the-art hologram stage, Korea's first. Called School Oz, this hologram musical premiered on Wednesday, starring SM artists on huge displays, covering the audience with 270 degrees of visuals.
There was a lot of preparation for this hologram musical. I had to put a lot more effort into how I acted, so it goes well with the hologram effects.
The complex is topped off with a souvenir shop, a cafe, and studios where you can actually make a music video or record an album. Or if you're not ready for that yet, you can receive vocal training from actual SM staff members. Ready for the limelight or not, the new complex is sure to attract the K-pop fans from all over the world to Korea. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The upper parts, including here in Seoul, we've been enjoying early spring-like weather today. It feels more like early March than mid-January. And later on, the high will top out to 7 this afternoon in Seoul. And dry weather advisory that has been in effect in the eastern coastal regions has finally been lifted thanks to a light rain. Though 5 millimeters of more rain is expected in those regions till the afternoon, while the rest of the country country can expect to have a bright day under mostly to partly sunny skies. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. So the high in Seoul will climb up to 7, while Daegu and Gwangju should peak at 9, and Busan will reach 11 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will rise to 9, while Daejeon and Dokdo will be getting up to 8 and 5. Now enjoy the spring-like weather while you can, because after tomorrow morning's mix of rain and snow in the metro area, temperatures will become icy cold again on Saturday, though it should get warm again after that. Well, that's all I have for you today, and let's send it back to Mark and Jinju in the studio.
Well, thank you ever so much, as always, for the weather there, Jian. And those are stories we are following at this hour.
Join us again at the same time on Friday. Thank you for watching.